A full year after its initial release in Japan, Lost Dimension has arrived in the United States courtesy of Atlus, and will arrive in Europe in late August thanks to NIS America. Developed by Lancarse, who you may recognize as having worked on the Nintendo DS titles Etrian Odyssey and Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey, Lost Dimension is a tactical RPG with combat similar to that of Valkyria Chronicles and Natural Doctrine. You play as a member of SEALD, an organization of gifted individuals tasked with stopping a man named The End, whose goal is world destruction. Not a particularly novel concept, however, there is a unique twist. As your team progresses through the pillar that the End has constructed, you must discover who among your group is actually a traitor. Luckily, the main character's gifted ability allows him to see into the minds of others, hearing their thoughts to help determine their identity. Each new floor that you climb up, the team is forced to vote on who they think the traitor is, who is then erased from existence whether they were innocent or not. Afterwards, a new traitor is activated and the cycle begins until you reach the top. This traitor mechanic is the hook for Lost Dimension, and for the most part, it works extremely well. Your team consists of 11 SEALD members, none of whom are familiar with each other, and one of them is randomly chosen as a traitor. You'll assemble a team of 6, one member always including yourself, and at the end of battle, you'll begin to see the thoughts of the members that you brought. Words in their portraits will flood the screen, and however many red lines of dialogue appear, is how many suspects that were in your current group. You then constantly swap members in and out of battle to try and narrow down who the suspicious members are. Find a group where you hear no voices, you can safely assume that none of them are the traitor. Find a group with 3 members having suspicious voices. You then know that one of them is the traitor, as there can only be 3 suspects per floor. Once you have your suspects narrowed down, you can use the limited amount of VP you acquire as you progress to perform a deep vision on one of the members. You'll then enter a simple minigame where you'll know whether or not they're the traitor at the end.
The one in the wrong is me.
Narrowing down the traitor isn't the end of it, however. You must then persuade the remaining members of SEALD to vote for the correct person. This all relies on manipulating the trust levels of others, raising and lowering their battle scores, as the higher members gain more votes and are less likely to be voted on, while the lower ranking ones are the opposite, and telling other members who you think that the traitor is when it comes up in conversations. Sure, once you understand all of the mechanics, it becomes fairly easy to get the results that you want. However, during the first few floors, the system adds a ton of suspense as you desperately try to weed out the traitor. Even if the narrative payoff for all of this isn't huge, the game would be way less interesting without this mechanic. That's not to say that the core gameplay is bad by any means, it just covers familiar territory. As I mentioned earlier, you start a battle by choosing which 5 SEALD members you want to bring into battle, the 6th being the main character. The traitor mechanic forces you to vary up the members that you bring. In a lot of RPGs, I'll just choose my favorite characters, or go with the composition that works best, but in Lost Dimensions, it encourages you to use all of the characters at your disposal. Each one has a unique gift to help differentiate the skills that they bring into battle. They all fill the typical roles that you'd expect, with some unique twist on a few of them. Though, some do share the same weapons or similar skills, as a sort of fallback if one becomes a traitor. Once you've decided who to bring, you set their starting location and begin the battle. Battles are turn-based between the player and the CPU. You're free to move your characters in whatever order you wish, with your turn ending once all of your members have acted. Moving a character is a tad less intuitive than it should be. Instead of just having a circle that you can move around in, the game actively divides a portion of the circle behind you as you move forward, so that you eventually can't move left or right. I'm not sure what the point of this is, as you can just press the circle button to redo your movements if you'd like. I guess in extreme cases, it prevents you from moving around objects at the very edge of your movement range. But it seems more like a holdover from a movement system where you weren't supposed to be able to redo it. It functions fine, but you'll spend more time trying to find the perfect angle to move in than you'd like. Unlike something like Valkyria Chronicles, you're safe from enemy fire as you decide where to move. Enemies and allies will indicate how far away they are from you, so you can decide where you need to move to use a certain skill. You can also select a skill beforehand that shows the area that it can be used, then hold down the square and move. Without this function, moving around would be dreadful, having to constantly redo your actions to land in the correct spot. Once you choose your target to attack, you'll be notified if the enemy is within range to counterattack. You'll also have indicators over your allies that let you know if they'll be able to assist you in the attack or not. This is based on their trust with the character initiating the attack, as well as if they're even within range to hit the target or not. Building the trust required for allies to assist in combat is fairly key to success. Just attacking enemies one at a time will lead to many counterattacks and longer battles. The enemies take advantage of this as well, where I'm reminded of similarities to natural doctrine. When an enemy attacks, so will any others that are within range. This means if 3 enemies are next to you, you could be attacked 9 times in a row, leading to a quick death. Unlike natural doctrine, however, the game isn't over if one member falls. You can revive them with items. This provides a decent challenge to positioning your units correctly, without being overly punishing for any mistakes. Besides the usual health and mana bars, you also have to worry about sanity. For the enemy, if you deplete their sanity gauge through various attacks, they'll become dazed for a turn, where they receive extra damage. For sealed members, it functions a bit differently. Most of your skills will require sanity and GP, the game's name for mana. They'll also lose sanity when they are attacked, and if this reaches 0%, that member becomes berserk, making them uncontrollable for 2 turns, as well as attacking enemies and allies at random. Their damaging stats will increase while their defensive stats decrease. Afterwards, they'll become dazed for 1 turn. While an ally is berserk, the other members will become feared. This increases the sanity cost of abilities for all members for 3 turns. Berserk is fairly easy to avoid. It essentially functions as a limit for the defer system. Normally, once you've moved a member, their turn is over. However, you can have another ally defer their turn to someone who has already acted. This allows you to use stronger characters multiple times in 1 turn, though by risking the unit's sanity as you must use 10%. This is a powerful ability that has many potential functions, such as allowing an ally to move back to safety, or to unleash damaging abilities back to back. To restore sanity, you can simply end your turn without acting. I'd say the biggest flaw to combat are the environments and enemies. There are only about 5 environments to do battle in, though each mission does at least have a unique layout. The game does move quickly from floor to floor if you just focus on the main quest, though to reliably weed out your current trader, you'll need to either do side quests or revisit a previous stage. As for the enemies, there really isn't a whole lot of variety. You'll be fighting the same robots over and over. Each new floor adds a couple new types, but nothing that really stands out. You can clearly tell that the game had a lower budget and tried to make up for it with its unique hook. When you're done smashing up robots, you'll return to the lobby. Here you have a few options between battles. First, you can interact with any remaining members of Sealed. Talking with them will help raise their trust and eventually leads to a unique character quest. They all have their own personalities and backstories that you can learn, but only a few of them are very interesting. At the generator, you can buy and sell weapons, armor, accessories, and items, which you can equip to your characters at the setup screen. There you'll also find each character's skill tree. Every character has a different gift, even if some fill similar roles. You gain a new point every other level to spend on improving your current skills and unlocking new ones by following the different branches. Any character that has been erased for being a traitor will also drop what is called a fate materia. This allows you to equip their skill tree onto one of your remaining characters, which if combined with the right person, will also unlock new abilities in their own skill tree. This helps to ease the pain if, for example, your healer turns traitor, you will still have access to his unlocked abilities. Finally, the Vision tab is where you'll be able to examine all of the information you need to find the traitor's identity. You can see everyone's trust levels, battle rankings, and which members are likely to be erased if the voting took place now. The Vision history is where you'll do all your detective work. The game will keep track of your last 10 battles and how many suspicious voices were heard at the end of it. You can then work to narrow down who these members are and spend the Vision points mentioned earlier to know for sure. Coming in at $40 or your regional equivalent, you can find the game on the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita. If you plan to play the game at any point, you should be aware that for 2 weeks after launch there is a bunch of free DLC available, which I believe means it'll expire on August 11th. Even if you don't currently own the game, you can add the DLC to your account, so be sure to do so before the offer expires. The overall narrative may be a bit lacking, and the production value is below average, but there are still some interesting ideas in Lost Dimension. Without the trader system, I'd be hard-pressed to convince anyone to give it a shot. It would still be a decent game, but not one to tell your friends about. If the trader system sounds interesting to you, I think you'd enjoy your time with Lost Dimension.